Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My respected ulama, my elders, brothers and sisters, it is necessary for many of us to understand the challenges we face as a Muslim community in relation to many issues around service provisions for the Muslim community. One of those provisions is the issue of death and bereavement, which is something that each and every one of us inevitably will be facing sometime in the future. It would be good if I try to put some context first to the organization, how the organization came into being, and where we are today, and the possible challenges that we may face in the future. Alongside me, we have Brother Salim. Brother Salim is the office manager at the Bengal Council office on 1A Moat Road, and he would be the first point of call in relation to any of the needs that people have in relation to death, or when one loses a loved one. He would be the man on the ground, so to speak. I'll call upon him once in a while in relation to things that I may have forgotten and something that needs further clarification, because he has immense knowledge on the particular subject, on the practical side of dealing with this issue. Firstly, if we look at the Muslim Burial Council, it was formed over 2 decades ago, at a time when the Muslim community faced difficulty in relation to burying the deceased within 24 hours or so thereafter. This provision did not exist in the United Kingdom, and Leicester was the first one that set about forming a burial council with all the masajids right across the sectarian divide, and mandated with this, we approached the local authority and, alhamdulillah, signed the first historic document in Europe permitting Muslims access to burial facilities 7 days a week. And as a result from there, it has now expanded nationally, and some of the work that I talk about, I have also taken it across to continental Europe, especially the Scandinavian countries of Norway and Sweden. So alhamdulillah, what started in Leicester has benefited nationally, but has also benefited Muslims at a European level. In some ways, the UK is ideally placed because until now, until the Brexit vote, we are part of Europe, so what happens here influences European policy, but also being part of the head of the Commonwealth also influences policies in other parts of the world, and we may touch on some of those issues time permitting. The Burial Council, as I said, was set up just over 2 decades ago, and after signing a legal agreement with the local authority, we were then given the authority to carry out burials on behalf of the Muslim community when the local authority was closed. In other words, when they closed, we would open and we would do the work. The funding of the burial authority was somewhat slightly different then. What we had was a small grant that we got from the local authority, and every person that passes away gets a charge, what's called an interment fee, and part of the interment fee was kept by the local authorities for their archiving, and the balance was then given to the Burial Council because we did half the work. But just over a year ago, that changed because of the procurement law of Europe, and we had to then fill in a tendering process, and alhamdulillah, through the du'as of our Muslim community, we managed to secure the tender, and we continue so for another 3 years plus 1, 4 years, inshallah, and at that point we will have to see where we proceed with it. The organization itself, it falls into 2 particular parts. There is an arm that deals with issues that support families. This is not something that's been paid for by the local authority. This is fi sabilillah, the work that the Burial Council and its various trustees do, which is the support mechanism. Basically what we talk about, putting the arm around somebody when they lose a loved one, because at that time it's very traumatic and people don't quite understand what individuals will have to do. The legal structure then moves on to the financial arm of the Burial Council, and the financial arm deals with the issue around paperwork and all the legalities surrounding the paperwork and the work that we do on behalf of the local authority. So there's 2 distinctive parts that's wrapped under one roof, because this is a way we evolve over time, and it has worked extremely well. It has worked extremely well not only in relation to providing that service for the Muslim community, But of course, there were other agreements that we had to reach. For example, the NHS Trust, the 3 hospitals in Leicester, Glenfield, the Royal and the General Hospital would only have body releases Monday to Friday within hours. What I mean within hours means within office hours. But alhamdulillah, now we have Saturday, Sunday, bank holidays, etc. There's also an issue about registration that takes place. Every person that passes away in this country has to go through a registration process. That registration only existed from Monday to Friday, but alhamdulillah, through separate agreements, we now have registration on Saturday, Sunday, and bank holidays, be a couple of hour window opening on those times. But again, that is in place. We've also worked very closely with the coroner's department in relation to a number of issues that deals with postmortems and possibly the reduction of postmortem, which is something that is disliked not only by the Muslim community, but by the wider community. And then, of course, we work wider with the police in relation to police liaison officers when death takes place as a result of road traffic accident, suicide, and various other criminal activities. Again, that needs an input from the Legal Council. So the legal structure of the organization is basically, we are a limited company by guarantee, and we are a charity that's registered. The only person we have employed is Brother Salim. The rest of the trustees, the Royal Burial Council, do so in their own time, and they provide the service to the community. The process whereby one loses a loved one can be very difficult and very complicated at a particular point. So we break it down into 2 particular parts. Firstly, 80% or so of deaths that take place in the United Kingdom take place in a hospital, hospice, a place outside the home, and therefore the procedure is somewhat slightly different to the 20% who pass away whilst at home. So the percentage of people passing away at home is far less than those that pass away within the hospital environment. Therefore, the requirements are somewhat slightly different. Now, of course, there's no clear-cut answer as to which way we proceed in relation to the death that takes place, because it depends on the circumstances around the death. So as an example, if a loved one was at home and death was not expected, in other words, an unexpected sudden death, then of course there's a tendency that people would ring the 999, get a paramedic or an ambulance service that would come down and would attend to that individual. If when they attended to the individual, and the individual was found to have already passed away, or passed away under the care of a paramedic, or passed away in an ambulance, or passed away on arrival at accident emergency, then there is a case where that case will be reported to the coroner, because the coroner has an interest. The reason for this could be varying, but the most important reason is there may be a medical negligence case, possibly the treatment given to that individual by staff of the NHS may not have been adequate, so as a result of that, people would have to determine why the person had passed away. It does not necessarily mean that once the body goes under the care of the coroner, there will always be a postmortem. There could be a long-standing illness. If one had seen the family GP, example, in the last 14 days, and the GP is prepared to talk to the coroner, then the body could be released the following day. It can also be as a result of people, what we call end of life. So people with terminal illness may have been asked to return back home to be with their loved ones, and at that particular time, if that person passes away, then there will be some sort of medical records, and that makes things slightly easier. However, if there's no medical record, and the person have not seen the family GP in relation to what they think the person had passed away in the last 14 days, then there will be an interest by the coroner. Now, we must understand that the power of the coroner is ultimate. In other words, a coroner should be seen as a judge, like a High Court judge. Their appointment is central from London, from government, though they are paid by the local authority. So we cannot influence the coroner by saying, I know a politician, a councillor, a member of parliament, or what our community usually does is, I know a good uncle who has all the connections and will make this work. It does not work that way. And that's so important for us to realize that. Because what tends to happen is, it complicates and delays issues a lot more than what is required. If somebody passes away in the hospital again, it depends on the circumstances. If the person was recently admitted, say 24, 36 hours, and the person has passed away and they feel that there may have been treatment that was not given to the person that was appropriate, again, the coroner would have an interest in the body. If a person had passed away, say, following an operation, that have to have an interest by the coroner, because it could be that the operation was not done correctly. So we need to understand that there are complicated issues that surround us. However, for those that are terminally ill, example, people that suffer from certain illnesses, and some may go to a hospice like Loros for adults or Rainbow for children. There are people who are already sent across there, and they feel that possibly life may not be very long, and therefore those are slightly easier because we work with those cases directly from Loros and Rainbow. And as part of our training process, we also do training to medical practitioners and doctors at hospices and various places to get them to understand the need of the Muslim community. We are not asking for special favors, we are simply stating that as Muslims, there is a requirement for us to bury our deceased as soon as possible, or what we say within 24 hours, but it's not actually magical 24 hours, it's as soon as possible with a minimum disruption. And many of the medical practitioners are quite good at trying to work with this issue. The issue of the coroner also becomes complicated because some people talk about issues around what they call virtual autopsy. Most people will know it as MRI CT scanning. It's a scanning process where a body is put through a scanning machine and cause of death is determined. Now, early results through university studies have shown 82-83% success rate in determining cause of death. It is not still the preferred option nationally, and a lot depends on the coroner of the city or the county that you are living in, whether they will allow that to take place. And even if they do, there will be a cost implication with this. So what you have to weigh up at that particular time, in Leicester we do have a scanning process, but there is a difficulty in relation, there may be a slight delay in relation to getting the body through a scanning process, then a post-mortem. So if speed is of requirement, then some people choose the option of a post-mortem. Others feel that it's a desecration of the body and they opt more for the MRI or CT scan. Usually CT scan, MRI is very expensive. Now, if there are good medical records and files that follow, then to determine cause of death through that virtual autopsy route is a little bit easier. But in certain cases, they can't and will always have to revert back again. So the issue could delay matters. It could not be conclusive. It could also lead to a post-mortem after paying for a MRI or CT scan that follows it. So we need to understand that there are certain restrictions and certain limitations placed on all of this. Sometimes people think, and they think it's a silver bullet, it resolves everything. It doesn't. There are cases it works and cases it doesn't. Now, what we have been trying to do in Leicester is we have been talking to our coroner for a number of years, and we are hoping to have a system whereby virtual autopsy becomes the preferred option first, and then a post-mortem second. But that will require change in law in England and Wales as to how cause of death is determined by a scanning process as opposed to a traditional autopsy that people are more accustomed to. At the moment, there's no general ruling throughout the country, and so we need to be mindful that this is still a work in progress. And some of the work, we've done some early trials, but they were not conclusive with the Department of Health and the Ministry of Justice here in Leicester and a few other cities, and we are still waiting to get some results on that. However, as technology advances, I'm sure they'll get better and better with this, and inshallah, who knows, from 80 to 83%, it might go to 86, 90% in time to come, so we need to understand that. Then the second issue is the issue of certification. When somebody passes away at home, and the paramedics or the ambulance service, whoever may come, maybe a doctor on call, they will give you a death certificate. That death certificate simply says the person has passed away. It's not sufficient to start the process. It's just to say life is extinct, that's all it says. What we need is something called a cause of death certificate. What was the cause that the person had passed away from? Now, what we recommend to most people is, if you have a family member that is quite ill, it may be advisable, wherever possible, to try and keep the number of your family GP with you at that time and say you only contact the family GP, and that's if the GP is prepared to do so. And if the GP comes down, then hopefully the GP will issue a certificate. But there is no legal requirement for them to do so. It may go on to the next working day or when the surgery opens. So that depends on your relationship between yourself, your family members, and your doctor. Now, when a cause of death certificate is issued, that certificate is in an envelope that is sealed. and that has to then go to the registrar. The registrar will open the envelope, and in it will be the cause of death certificate. Once that is issued, the process starts. Until then, nothing happens, nothing moves in this country. You have to have the cause of death first. When it goes to the registrar, a number of things can happen. One, and in most cases happens, is the process is simple. You go to the registrar, you take your passport of the deceased person, the paperwork is entered into, and you are given either what they call a green form, which is the minimum form required to bury your deceased, and then go on later in the week, or maybe a week or two later, to enter the full registration, or they may give the full registration at the same point. But if the cause of death certificate is not conclusive, i.e., the doctor has not signed it, the doctor has given more than one cause of death, and this has happened in the past, then that certificate has to be resent back to the hospital or to the doctor for it to be certified again with the correct issues that are missing. Now, this is where the difficulty arises, certainly with the sections of our community, because as a Muslim community, it's not unusual to have a few hundred, a few thousand people at a funeral of a Muslim, and most of us have family and friends throughout the country, and people tend to announce the funeral straight away, and we have people coming in from other cities. Now, if at that point there's a hiccup, this could be delayed till the following day. The inconvenience to the family, the inconvenience to the travelers that are coming to sit at your place. Most houses are a terrace house 2 up, 2 down, to accommodate them, to feed them, and all the practical aspects become more difficult. So what we say to people is, until everything is not clear and you have not been given the go-ahead, then please do not announce a time for the funeral. Because they have done this in the past, and then people have had to return back home and come back again. So I know there's a tendency of wanting to do it as quick as possible, but there are certain restrictions that we need to always avoid. Another thing we need to also avoid is, as I said earlier, everybody seems to know somebody who's of an influential position within the community, and they say, well, ignore that one or ignore the other one. We know somebody who will make things work. And it doesn't really work that way. Believe me, in our experience. All it does is just muddies the waters and makes things more difficult. If we follow due process, then inshallah, we will proceed in a timely fashion. Once more people get involved in it, then it causes difficulty with the hospital staff, because there's a delay. They may have to find the on-call manager, they may have to find a consultant or the team that dealt with the individuals. The coroner's office then get annoyed, and they ring back and says, why is so many people contacting about the same particular funeral? So it's important to try and designate an individual within a family who takes over, and they become the link between either the local authority, the coroner, or the Muslim Burial Council, and the family. That way, it's channeled through, appropriately, through one individual, as opposed to 10 people ringing in, because at that particular point, an individual feels that the funeral is only in their hands, but they don't know there are many other funerals that take place. There's also other difficulties that we experience, is people give funeral times, but we don't know, because there is a time limit on the number of funerals the local authority can conduct. There is also a 2-hour wait between one funeral and the other to give them time to backfill it. There's health and safety issues of insurance that are not covered. So if one is at 2 o'clock, people say, well, why can't I have one at 3 o'clock? But it has not left 2 hours in between. Also, the grave diggers that work for the local authorities do not only work for the Muslim community. There are other people from other faith communities and none who also require a burial to take place. However, the majority of burials is still done from the Muslim community and certainly from the Orthodox Jewish community. Various other people still have the preference of cremation, which of course is no place for us, and therefore there is that time lapse between one and the other, and we need to be aware of. There's also other issues that we need to consider, which is, and we found this rather difficult, is increasingly the dynamics and the demographics of the Muslim community in Leicester, in fact the whole country, has changed. We are no longer what we used to think the South Asian community that dominated the Muslim community of this country. We have people from all parts of the world, and therefore the cultural norms also kick in, and we need to understand, including issues that surround the issues of language barrier that comes in between, or it could be people that come from, say, war-torn countries who are refugees here, and as a result, were traumatized as a result of losing their loved ones back home, and all of this is relived again back when they come back to this country. So we need to be sensitive to try and understand that we are not talking to members of the settled community who have been here 40, 50 years, but it could be a new arrived community, and we need to adjust our ways of how we deal with those particular individuals. There's also an increasing cross-cultural marriages that are taking place. So people that are marrying people from other faiths or non-faith. And the difficulty we find as a Muslim Burial Council is when it's a Muslim and we go to try to claim the body for the usual shrouding and ghusl and everything else, there is objection met by the opposite side. So try and realize that people who are in cross-cultural marriages, there are certain difficulties. One way to overcome this difficulty is if you visit our website, we have a statutory declaration in place. We ask people for those cross-cultural marriages to download it. Simply the form states that the individual will be buried according to the Sunnah, according to the Islamic rites, and they would sign it, and you get a commissioner or somebody to countersign it. We could keep a form, they could keep a form, and at a time when they pass away, if we went to the home example that it was a man that passed away, at least we can show the wife of that individual what the last wishes of that individual was. Therefore, it makes life a bit easy. It's not legally binding, but it is usually respected by people because they feel it's the final wish of their loved one, and therefore it's more accommodating. And we are finding ourselves doing more and more of this. We've also had difficulties sometimes when we try and claim a body. In fact, in one occasion, I remember it took us nearly 3 days to get hold of a particular Muslim body. The initial stages was that they felt that the daughter felt that the cremation was a way forward, and of course cremation is prohibited within our faith, and so it took us 3 days just to convince this particular family to release the body back to the community, and therefore we can carry out the rights of individuals. So there are other complications that arise as a result of cross-cultural marriages, and we need to be fully aware of all of that. Another issue that is of concern to people in recent times is the grave types that we have. If you look at the Janazah hall, and if you look immediately to the left, you'll find, as you're walking down the path, there is 2 parts. There's one on the right-hand side and one on the left-hand side. There are more people buried towards the left than there are on the right. Now, the one on the right is called a traditional grave. A traditional grave is slightly more expensive, and it allows you not only to put the tombstone, but the sides and everything else that goes with it. And the lone grave, which is on the left-hand side, so if your back is towards the Janazah, is the traditional, what we used to call traditional, but they call it the lone grave, is cheaper, and that's where most people would bury the deceased, but the only thing allowed there is a tombstone of some sort that just identifies a person. So it's more of a marker, you cannot build around it, and we have to be careful that once you choose that, that is it. You cannot change it. Now, there's a lot of confusion around this. What we do is either in hours when they go to Gilroy Cemetery or out of hours when they come to MBCOL, we will always give them the preference and tell them the 2 different types of graves, the cost, and what they can and they cannot do. However, we truly understand that it's an emotional time, and at times like this, people find it very difficult to make the right decision and immediately choose one or the other, and a few weeks, a few months down the line, feel that they were not appropriately advised. So we are continuously trying to do this education process. In fact, the form that we're filling, you have to take an option. I want a traditional grave or I want a lone grave. And so they will usually give them the explanation. He's got a chart and say which one. And then the people actually sign and consent to that particular grave. So there's a legal binding document there. However, we are not talking about legalities here, we're talking about the emotional issues of people. They get confused. So what we've done is we've identified this problem for quite a while, and as a result, there's a number of leaflets that we'll be, inshallah, distributing soon, or printing maybe 10,000 more copies. It's 2, in fact. One will talk about the different kinds of graves and the facilities that are available there, and the other one will talk how the funeral is actually being arranged. And we're hoping, inshallah, that through education process like this we are here today, we can continue. We do this on Radio Ramadan continuously, and we've been trying to make publication books. Our website is there, and there's something more unique that we're trying to do, inshallah, which will be up and running soon, is we used to have a funeral alert system, where if somebody passed away, they used to register with the Muslim Burial Council. in relation to getting a text message to say a funeral of an individual, the time and the date, whatever the case may be. But the website could not cope with it because it was oversubscribed. So we'll have to go to a more paid system. But what we've done also, or have decided to do, which is already should be around very shortly, we have now developed an app for all smartphones, for both Apple and for Android phones. The app itself will be an alert system. If it depends on which alert you want, for example, you want an alert to say, as soon as the funeral takes place, it will pop out, a balloon will pop out and give you the name, address, everything else. Including in that app will be other educational matters that relate to du'as, how to perform ghusl, all those kind of issues, advice that we need as a Muslim community. And we'll start developing that more and more. Inshallah, it's our intention to run this nationally. And so we will join in with national burial councils up and down the country. And you just toggle a switch and say, well, I have relatives in Blackburn as an example. So I want Leicester and I want Blackburn. I want Blackburn, Manchester, and Bolton as an example. That would be left to the individual. The default setting will be the city where you live in. Those people will then input that, inshallah, that information in, so we'll get that information coming from that particular side. So it's important that we know about this issue. The issue around cost also is one that's often confusing. Salim would have the prices, but at the moment I don't think anybody will remember if I give you all the options and the prices. But generally we are talking about £2,500 is an average. It may go up or slightly less, depending on the sort of grave type you pay. A lot more if you pick the traditional grave, and the cost from a masjid in relation to the coffin, drop, all that kind of thing has to be covered. Now, for those that have difficulty, people that may be under financial stress, people that may be unemployed, there is a fund by the local government which will help to pay towards the cost of those individuals, but very few people actually move into that direction. Most people have something that will pay it. There has been an occasion 3 or 4 times in the past where somebody has been new to the city, has no relatives, could be somebody from a refugee crowd, whatever the case is. Once we check on those individuals, then it is something that we deal with by trying to recoup the cost from the general public. So there are well wishers that we send emails to or text messages to, and we've only had to do it for 3 or 4 times so far, where people will actually pay for that particular funeral. But the funeral has to be up to a particular limit. So example, if a family collects £1,500, they're already short of £1,000 to cover the cost, we will only collect up to the 1,000. If we get another £5 extra, we have to return it back, because within our faith, we can only take the money that relates to that particular issue, and we cannot hold on the money for the next one as well. There are people who are talking about trying to create a fund, etc., but we have spoken to some of our legal jurists, the muftis in the city, etc., and there is a general opinion that a general fund should not be created for this. Even when the time arises, we should do so. But again, it's very important what I said. This is what some have said. The Muslim Burial Council is not there to talk about faith, about jurisprudence. We are a non-sectarian body. We do not get involved within these issues, nor do we ever get involved within the local politics, between massages, etc. One of the reasons of the success of the Burial Council is being because we've remained non-sectarian. We have remained respectful to all members of the Muslim community, irrespective of which background they come from. They could be totally different to what I grew up in, but again, we respect their wishes. We are there to provide a service. We are not there to discuss jurisprudence. And even, in fact, today, with these questions and answers, you can refrain from talking about those kind of issues, because we always suggest that you go back to the ulama, you go back to the jurists, the scholars from within the community who are qualified to give you those kind of advice. We will abstain from those kind of issues as well. There's other issues that we talk about in relation to end-of-life issues, which we work, of course, with the NHS and various other agencies, both in London and abroad, in relation to how good practice can be brought in, because from a medical practitioner's point of view, when somebody is nearing towards death, there isn't that holistic approach as to how we deal with that individual. There's always the issue about how much pain control we can give that individual, or how many milligrams of antibiotics as an example. The individual is not interested in that. The individual at that point is now parting this world, inshallah, to meet the Maker. So their mind is more towards the spiritual field, and we have drawn guidelines for all the hospitals that they have internally, which is, of course, the removing of external issues like tubes, false teeth, etc., hands together, feet binded together, and possibly make the allowance of family member or one or two family members to sit at the bedside of the individual, maybe at that particular point to give water or maybe recite from the Quran or somewhat to help that transitional period of the individual, because that holistic approach is needed at that particular time. Though the medical side is there, but the preparation for that individual is into the next life, and therefore the spiritual guidance is important. These guidelines have been already drawn up by the Medical Council, shared nationally to all other hospitals, and hopefully, inshallah, that will work there. The bereavement support system is something that, to a degree, we have not quite managed to control totally. And what I talk about is the issue around the inner period for sisters. Many that may struggle may lose a husband, they may need practical advice, they may need practical help, picking up children, helping shopping, etc. And we are hoping that sometime in the future we can create a situation where sisters can visit other sisters who have lost a loved one and provide that support that's much needed for those individuals. Because at the end of the day, that is something that as a community we need to also consider right across all issues about vulnerability in our community and how we can support those individuals. So inshallah, we are looking at that. There's other issues that people may become traumatic as a result of losing a loved one, especially if it's a young child or somebody very close to. But again, we cannot give that advice because we are not professional counselors, and sometimes we can cause more damage than good by providing that. So we are hoping that we tap into those professionals within our community who already have counseling experience with them, and therefore they can provide that kind of support. There's also an issue of shortage of burial land. Now, the shortage of burial land is just generally right across the country. There's a limitation to the amount of land we have. At the moment, a local authority cemetery gives you a leasehold of 99 years. It's not freehold, it's 99 years, and that's the leasehold you hold. After 99 years, they can turn the place over again, though it will be a bit more difficult in the present climate because of the sensitivities, but they can do so. Another issue we must remember also is local authorities legally are not required to give you burial space. If they do so at the goodwill of the individuals, but they can withdraw it. And if you look at any city planning, whether it's planning for schools, hospitals, etc., burial ground is more or less right at the very bottom of the things to do. Yet it's the only thing that's definite in our life. Well, there's two things. One is taxes, and the other is death. And these things is definite that we will, of course, need this. So we are looking at different options. Now, within the new section of the cemetery, for people that wish to use, and I'm talking about coffin graves now, people that use a coffin, we go double depth. In other words, the person goes down to 8 foot, and of course the grave is filled up. And in later times, that individual, if he or she chooses themselves to allow another family member or a loved one to use the same space, then they will dig down, leave possibly about 2 foot, and then the next body will be lowered there. There is some scholars who believe that possibly you should keep family members. Others believe that people of the same gender should be there. But again, these guidelines should be sought from your ulama. The only reason I'm saying this, it may escape your mind to ask this, so maybe this is something that you need to ask now before the situation arises. Now, the person that holds that land will determine whether they are allowed a second person to be buried there or not. There's an encouragement from some sector that it will help the pressure on land, because land is premium at the moment, and so we can get maximum space. Others believe that no, the land should run out before we do that. That's an individual choice, and individual scholars will have to deal with that particular issue, but the facilities are there. The Janazah hall itself also, it belongs to the local authority, and inshallah we are hoping to extend it slightly sideways, because when we have large funerals, we have difficulty, but it will not encompass a roof and heating and everything else, because if you go sideways, the Janazah Salah lasts a very short period, and again, the amount of cost that we spend on the janazah itself will be irrelevant to the lifespan of the qabristan, of the cemetery. So if the cemetery, as an example, I'm not saying this is the case, say example, if the cemetery is going to last another 14, 15 years, then the amount of money you spend would have to go in tune with that 14, 15 years. There's no point spending £1 million and then finding out 15 years' time that the cemetery has moved on and people have moved somewhere else, the building becomes redundant. So there are certain restrictions. We are working with them, and inshallah we are hoping that this will come through. So again, the land belongs to you, the individual. For people that choose a timber burial, not the one in a coffin, then it's single. They will not go to that double death, and therefore 2 people cannot be buried in a timber burial, only 2 people in a coffin burial. There are a number of reasons for this, but one of the reasons also is if you bury with timber, you go much deeper, the issues of health and safety, the land collapsing around you as you're going down in the cover, etc. And there's various other rules and regulations governing this. So we need to be aware of all of this. Now, besides this practical work, there are other number of consultations that have taken place, and the Burial Council have been involved. If I give you an example, if you go on our website, you'll see a number of consultations. The issue after old age organ retention scandal, what happened is organs of young babies, especially young children, were not put back in their bodies again. That has changed now, and the new rules require them to keep a register. It has to be secured, has to be audited, has to be returned to the family, whatever. Now, sometimes when you talk about organ, it can only be a tissue sample, you know, that they've taken a skin graft or something, but that has to be returned back to the family. So part of that consultation was done to the Burial Council. There's an issue around shortage of burial land, because there was a view in some quarters that the burial land that we have at the moment, if we reduce it from 99 years to 35 years or 25 years, we can turn it around quicker. But again, we've taken objection to that because it'll be within a lifetime of yours when you lose a loved one. So we're trying to keep that as maximum as possible to 99 years and not reducing it. Some of the other ridiculous suggestions that were made, and one of them, the most ridiculous one, was possibly to bury people standing upright. So the coffin is put down. Again, we have taken objection to that. That cannot happen within ourselves, so we cannot work down that. But this is just to give you some examples of some of the consultation that's been. There's a consultation in relation to organ donation. The government felt through the European Union and the House of Lords, which again, you'll find all these consultation documents on our website, that at the moment, if you wish to give your organs, you carry a donor card. The idea was to reverse it, an opt-in, opt-out option. In other words, consented to give your organs, and if you did not want to give your organs, then you had to carry a card. Of course, this is something that we have objected to, and at the moment the law still states in this country, when I mean this country, we have to be very mindful, certainly in England, that for those that wish to donate their organs, you have to carry a donor card. So it's not an automatic entry, but Wales has just changed its rules. So in Wales, people automatically feel that they consent to it. France has just done it in January this year. Spain and some of the other European countries have had it for a very long time. So this is nothing new in Europe, but at the moment we have certain difficulties with this. And there's a number of other consultations that we have. Testification, people may be aware of Harold Shipman and testification. Nearly 250 people have died as a result of Harold Shipman, and they were going to bring in 2 doctors' signatures. At the moment, there's 1 signature required for burial, 2 for cremation. Because once you cremate the body, and if they find anything wrong in the future, you cannot bring it back again, check it. But they were thinking of having 2. They might still do it in the future, maybe have 2 doctors, or have a doctor and a medical referee to determine that in the cause of death, that's correct. But again, our objection is not in relation to the legal aspect of it, is we are fearful of the delay. It's hard enough trying to get 1 doctor without 2 doctors being in place. So again, these are some of the challenges. Now the other challenges we find with MBCOL, and I'll come to an end there, and of course we will open up for questions and answers, because we have to enter this debate at the point that we're talking about. But the issue of the future of burial land is an example. I think the Muslim community, and we are actively looking, to have a private Muslim cemetery at some point in the future. And inshallah, when that comes, I'm sure that the Muslims will rise to the occasion and will support it. It's much needed, it's overdue. The difficulty we have at the moment is land is premium within the city boundary, and if you go in the county, it's slightly further, but we are looking far away into the county as well. And I think we need our own private facilities. It can run alongside the local authority, but when one fills up, we have something in place. And because because we work right across all the masajid in the city, I'm sure they will all accommodate this, and even when the time comes. But we have not found anything, therefore we will not go to the public there. Also, the issue of the burial council itself, if it's not renewed its tender in another 3 years' time, a year has lapsed already, then we don't know what the future would hold. At the moment, what happens is people come to the burial council for support. Actually, we are not designed as a grassroots level organizations. We are an umbrella body that filters the work through its membership. So the masjids are supposed to take on the role, and when they need our facilities, they come across and they use it, and we provide the support. But increasingly, more and more people are coming directly through the door. It is within the Islamic custom that despite what we have on a legal document, on a governing document, you always go that extra mile to help a fellow Muslim brother or sister, or for the matter, for help anybody in humanity. So it's important that we continue to do that. But the burial council sits aside from the masajid in the sense that people go to the masjid first, the local people, and they speak to the burial committee. And if the burial is after hours, and I'm sure Suleman will explain a lot of this hours and enough hours and what time and people kicks in, we are still helping people because people are more accustomed to it. Now, possibly some of the problems we have experienced is maybe somebody can become a victim of their own success. Because we have provided the service for so long, people are used to it and they require that service. Now, alhamdulillah, it is a pleasure to provide that service, and we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us the opportunity of serving the Muslim community, because that intention must always be sincere. We have to recheck all the time what we do and why we do it. But circumstances might arise in the future, and in that case there may not be the burial council, we don't know, in 3-4 years' time, or its identity may change, or its structure might change, and therefore it will be up to the community then to think whether it supports an existing organization or maybe they support something else. But that's something for the future, nothing to panic about at this stage, but it's important that people are made aware of that. I'll pass the microphone to Salim. Salim runs the office on a day-to-day basis, and he will explain the practical difficulties he comes across, and inshallah, hopefully he will try and address some of those, and then inshallah we'll open up the floor for questions and answers, and I believe that if the sisters have any questions, somehow it will be filtered through here to the front, and we'll take them. If we don't have an answer, we'll come back to you, but we'll try our best to pass. I'll pass your question to Suleman to talk about the practical things that he does on a day-to-day basis.